Hey sightseers, Sightseeing Sally here. I'm with
Meander and Marty.
And today we're checking out Carthage, Missouri, a
dynamite town. That's all I know. That's all I care about.
Carthage is home to, what was the name of the manufacturing?
Dino Noble.
Dino Noble, which is what, the only manufacturer of dynamite here in the
From
United
what we're
States?
told, I won't say 100% on it, but in the United States, that's what they claim the only company left, which I don't even know if that's their original name.
But beyond that, Carthage is also known as an old Route 66 town, and it has a ton of history steeped in the Civil War. So we're going to check out Carthage and see what's all here, or at least get a taste of what's here.
See you there.
To start things off, we're going to walk around the Carthage Historic Square, the town square, where in the middle you'll find the Jasper County Courthouse. Carthage is the county seat for Jasper County. And if you want to see a historic courthouse, this is it. You've got the old-time elevator still inside. It's not in operation anymore, but it's still in there. They've got an old-time telephone booth in there, and it's just a really great example of a historic building. Here's one view of it. You can see how massive it is. Designed by M.A. Orlop. It was constructed during the years of 1894 to 1895. To me, it looks like a castle. It is built out of marble that was quarried here in Carthage.
I don't know about marble, but to me, this looks like limestone.
Well, the brochure says that it's Carthage marble. Who am I to debate what the brochure says? But you could be right.
I'm always right.
As I mentioned in the beginning, Carthage is steeped in Civil War history. One of the things that happened here is the Battle of Carthage. And you can see here they have a memorial stone set up here, erected in the square with the courthouse, sharing the history of that battle. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. You can look it up if you're interested. But the thing that I wanted to mention about it is that during the Civil War, Carthage was actually burned down as part of that whole event.
And the townspeople had to rebuild.
As you can see, the townsfolk did a fine job of rebuilding. There are a number of historic buildings here. I believe I had read that there was over 600 some that are on the National Register of Historic Places, including the historic buildings down in the square, along with a whole big section of historic homes. We'll try to get and show you some of those as we go along, but there's a lot to see here in Carthage, and we're just going to show you, highlights of things just to give you an idea of what Carthage is like, that maybe someday you'll be able to come out and check it out yourself. Well, it looks like Marty has spotted something that he wants to go check out. Perhaps it's the Yellow Umbrella, where you'll find antiques, primitives, and home decor. What do you think, Marty? Do you want to poke your head inside and see what's in there?
Sure.
All right, why don't we go on in?
Remember years ago with kaleidoscopes? You don't see them anymore.
We got a little bit of everything in here. Thank you. I left Marty inside. He's looking through some stuff. He enjoys the old vintage and junk stores. And from the looks of it, there's no shortage of such stores. You've got Gode's Antique Mall, which is approximately 2 doors down from the Yellow Umbrella. I can see they've got some cool old hats inside. I'm almost tempted to go in. But if I keep going into stores, we're not going to get much videoing done today, are we? Looking at this block of buildings, you'll notice that the one on the corner used to be the Bank of Carthage. Now it houses Carthage Deli and Ice Cream. And what's really unique about this building is that it has some of the old stained glass, the leaded stained glass still part of its facade. There's some really cute shops here. This one is painted up to look like cotton candy, or at least that's what it reminds me of. Over here you'll find Cherry's Art Emporium on the square. And what caught my eye about this building is the old Viking alarm system that's still on the side of the building. The other unique feature about the building that Cherry's Art Emporium on the square is in, you'll find here on the side of the building, it says Ramsey Brothers, indicating that at one time this historic building housed the Ramsey Brothers Dry Goods Company. Moving on down the line, we can see that somebody was planning for my visit because they've got my all-time favorite Christmas cartoon character waiting to greet me. And this happens to be at Big Dog Boutique, pet supplies that breed jealousy. Well, with that kind of marketing, how can I possibly not go on inside? Hi. Couldn't go into Big Dog Boutique without getting something for the puppers. I see a coffee house up ahead. Why don't we go check that out, and then we'll go find Marty and check out more of the historic buildings in the downtown. So I ended up trying their golden milk and honey, and quite tasty. I think one of the reasons that Carthage's downtown is so vibrant is that you can sit here enjoying your drink from Hatcher's Coffee House while sitting on a park bench, taking in all the historic sights around you. I spy somebody walking over there. If I'm not mistaken, that's a Marty. A meandering Marty, that is. How's it going, meandering Marty?
Well, it's time to move the truck.
Just an FYI, if you come down here, parking is limited to 2 hours, so we gotta go move the truck, and then we'll continue on with our exploration of this area. Interestingly enough, our next parking spot brings us right to the place where James Scott, the great ragtime musician, began his career in 1906.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Marty, you should have your harmonica along, and then you could start your career right here.
You bet.
Since I just spotted this, I want to point out before I forget, you'll notice that the name of this tattoo company is Maple Leaf City. And the reason for that is, if you didn't know, Carthage, Missouri is known as the Maple Leaf City here in America. And while perusing the downtown, you're not noticing any major maple leaves or maple trees, excuse me. There is an entire section here in town where there are maple trees galore lining the streets, and if we get a chance, we'll drive down that a little bit later. First, we've got more sights to see here in the downtown square. You can see Marty is looking at the Star Lanes, a bowling and arcade miniature golf place.
And another neon. Of course, Marty loves them old neons. But at the top of it, it's kind of futuristic, and then it's got that pole with the light on top. Now, if I remember right, when we were in Yuma, Arizona, we seen an old hotel that I think had 2 or 3 of them on the top with the lights. That's the only other time I've seen that with lights on them poles.
Of course, as I was standing here looking up at the building, I couldn't help but notice the fact that when you zoom in You can see they have two fake owls sitting there, I suppose as a means to deter the pigeons that seem to be hanging around there. But I don't know how good that's working. At least it doesn't seem to be too effective with the birds that are sitting there now. Moving on, you can see that Marty is headed over in the direction of this old historic building over here. By the way, just as an FYI, for those of you who like to follow along on Google Earth, we are at East 3rd and Howard of the Courthouse Square Historic District. I've been forgetting to share that with those of you who like to do that. I'll try to do better. Anyways, Marty was peeking into the windows of this building. Obviously, it's very old, historic. You can see some of the old features yet here, but I think Marty noticed something inside that he wanted to point out.
On the wall over there, you can see all them bins and shelves and the counter in there. This must either been a hardware store, or it does say seeds on the side of the building. I believe that, you know, those could be either for seeds yet, or when this probably was a hardware store at one time.
Over here on the side of the building, you can see where it once read Tucker's, and then as Marty pointed out, it says seeds right there. As for the rest of it and what it said, it's hard to make out, but you can tell that it says yard there, customers
Only. Customers only, I can see.
Oh yeah, I can read it now too. It says customers only. And then over here, you can see that it used to say baby chicks. Something pretty much every hardware store or co-op these days sells. Well, obviously the hardware store is no longer selling them, but in this instance, they used to sell baby chicks there. The other thing I wanted to point out over here is that you can see the old brick sidewalk still in play here, only for a short section, but it is a reminder of days gone by. Marty, I noticed you're looking at something rather intently. What is it?
Look what's hidden in here. Steel. This is a cast steel or cast iron column in here, and it's holding up all the brickwork off of this corner. Hidden behind this wood. This was sticking out originally.
That's really cool to be able to see the inside bones of the structure. And then if you look up, you can see some leaded glass yet in the building. Back in the day, I imagine this was quite something to look at. Here's a reminder of the fact that it is winter right now, and Missouri did recently get dumped with a lot of snow. That's not something I would have expected to see down here. I don't think ordinarily they get that much snow. It was kind of one of those historic storms to hit this part of the country. Anyways, moving on. I see that Marty is checking out another historic building. This one is located at the corner of Howard and East 4th. Once known as the Drake, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this building used to be a historic hotel. And then if we look over here, we can see this entryway going on up to the second floor of this historic building. And the reason I'm pointing it out is that this isn't something that we would see ordinarily back in Wisconsin, but I find it really unique in that you've got this wrought iron gate as your entrance, and then going up you've got the wooden stairs and the old, what is that, wrought iron piping, Marty?
Yep.
As handrails.
Old black iron pipe.
Old black iron pipe. I don't know. For me, I find those details fascinating and unique. It's something I don't see and well, makes up part of the charm of the city. By the way, the building where we were just looking at, or where I was ogling the stairway going up, is part of what used to be the Carthage Gas Company building. And here's a better view of the Drake as well.
I don't know if you can see the roof line on number 213 there. But look at how small that building is.
One of the other things that Marty has a fascination for are like miniatures or tiny versions of things. And so he really spotted that building because it's kind of like a miniature version of the buildings around it. If you're really into architecture and historic buildings, I would say Carthage is definitely a place you want to put on your list of small cities, big towns to visit. Because everywhere you look in this historic downtown square, you're gonna see amazing historic architectural details, including an old burglar alarm on the side of this building. Continuing on down the square, you'll notice over here on the side of this building, they have a really cool mural painted. According to the placard that's here, the mural contains women and men from Carthage who have gone on to do great things. People like Janet Cavandi, NASA astronaut, David Newell, a Hollywood leading man, Annie Baxter, who was the first woman elected, and James Scott, ragtime composer, among other people. To make things easy for tourists, they have this nice handy map here of the city of Carthage, outlining different points of interest.
Drive-in theater. When was the last time you seen a drive-in theater?
I know. Along with that, you've got, of course, the Powers Museum, the Precious Moments Chapel and Gardens. Who remembers when Precious Moments was a thing? I do, because that would have been more of a girly thing than something I think that Marty would have gotten into. If we get a chance, and if I can talk Marty into it, we may stop at the Precious Moments Chapel Museum later on.
Buy some ceramic junk.
I didn't say I wanted to buy anything. I just said I wanted to go look. Over here at 110 East 4th, if we look up, we can see a lot of different architectural details, starting with the different glass that's different colors here around the windows. And then looking up, you can see more detailing up there. And then if we look from this angle, we can read that the name on the building is W.P. Miller, 1887. So that's an old building right there. And speaking of old buildings, I think Marty spotted one over here that he wants to check out. Known as the Juvenile Shoe Corporation building. Out of all the buildings here in the square, this is the one that caught my eye the most. Reason being, how often do you see a building that has any reference to juvenile shoes? Right, Marty?
I've never seen one before.
Me either. I don't know about you, but it conjures up some sort of image of toddlers and kids getting shoes. What about you?
Reminds me of my parents always kept them little leather shoes like 40, 50 years ago. They're all leather with the leather soles. They had no arch supports or nothing. That's what reminds me of when I read that on the building.
Yeah, now that you say that, I can totally picture that in my head too. Well, today, instead of selling juvenile shoes, you're gonna find a place called the Spellbound Boutique. It says, friendly dogs welcome. Oh, this sounds like my kind of place. Let's go on inside and check it out. Hello. Hello. Inside this eclectic boutique, you'll find a magical store, one with unique vintage clothing pieces, handmade jewelry, and other specialty items. Hang around here long enough, and you may even encounter a ghost or two. Well, that was a fun stop. Very interesting. If you're somebody that gets into, what do you want to say? The metaphysical, the legends and lore, hauntings, spiritual side of things, that is definitely the stop for you. While inside, we discovered that there are those who believe that there are a lot of spirits wandering this portion of Carthage, especially because you had the Civil War here. And of course, the city was burned. During the Civil War, I believe the whole city was burned down with the exception of a few buildings that may have survived that. And then there was also a flood here. And so there's been a lot of, what do you want to say, destruction that has occurred here. And so that makes this a prime spot or prime location for hauntings and things. Again, if you believe in that sort of thing. Look at that old sign. Pratt & Lambert paint. Galbraith's paint wallpaper. Look at the old tile that's still on the front of this building. Can you imagine having to clean the grout in between all those little tiles? And that, Sightseers, brings us down to South Main and West 5th. Now earlier we were talking about the composition of the courthouse, and I just found out in talking with one of the locals that the reason it is said that the courthouse is made out of Carthage marble is because should you let the stone sit underground for like another 1,000,000 years, it will turn into marble. But that means Marty was actually right.
For once.
Not for once. We're in luck. Museum is open. Whether or not they actually allow me to film in here is another story, but we'll find out here soon enough. This free little museum in Carthage is a must stop if you're a history buff. Here you'll learn everything you ever wanted to know about the Battle of Carthage, the first full-scale land battle of the Civil War. Just as a side note, the building that now houses the Civil War Museum used to be the fire department. And if you look directly across the street, you'll find the old post office. Of course, I couldn't come to Carthage without showing you their Carnegie Library. If you look up, you can see right behind the light, it says Andrew Carnegie. If I'm not mistaken, it's also made out of Carthage limestone, or Carthage marble as they call it. And it has a very shiny copper-colored dome that I imagine lights up or glows in the sunlight. How many of you out there remember watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom? I certainly do. Well, did you know that the host, Marlin Perkins, was from Carthage, Missouri? That's right, he was. And over in the park, across the street from the Carnegie Library, sits this statue in his honor. They have a Shakespeare quote here. It says, "His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, 'This was the man.'" I'd say that quote is pretty appropriate, wouldn't you? We're now over at the corner of Grand Avenue and East Budlong Street, standing in front of the historic Phelps House. Now, the thing that you may not know, sightseers, about Carthage is that back in the day, and this would have been after the Civil War, when the town or the city of Carthage was being rebuilt, there was a lot of money that came to be here. In fact, there was so much money that came to this area that it was said at one time that per capita, Carthage had the most millionaires than anywhere else in the United States. And you can see evidence of that fact to this day by all the old historic homes still here. For example, check out this home, which is across the street from the Phelps. You can see the old horse hitching post right out in front of it too. And then check out this home. This one is next door to the historic Phelps house. Here's another old home with a hitching post out in front. And we're not just talking about a couple of mansions. If you go down the street, you're gonna find blocks and blocks of just huge, beautiful homes. And then if you go over to the next street you'll also find beautiful homes there. This particular home was estimated to have been built in 1900, and it's known as the Kellogg House. Like I said, at one time it was said that Carthage was home to the most millionaires in the United States. Well, the reason for that is, if you didn't know, this area became really popular for mining, and that's where all the money came in, or at least a good portion of it. There were other industries, of course, that brought money to this area, but mining was huge at one point. I don't remember the exact dates, but I imagine a lot of these mansions were bought and paid for with money made during that era. For our second to last stop here in Carthage, I wanted to show you the Kendrick House. If I'm not mistaken, this is the oldest building standing in Carthage today. It was built pre-Civil War, and because Carthage was burned down during the Civil War, it is one of 2 buildings to have survived. As you can see, it now has a new roof. And from what I understand from talking to the gentleman in the Civil War Museum, they are in the process of restoring it, and hopefully the next time we end up down this way, we'll be able to go inside and tour it. For our final stop, I thought I would drag you out over to the Precious Moments Chapel Center. Unfortunately, we've arrived too late and are going to be unable to actually go on inside, but I thought I would just show you some of the figurines that are out here. You can see leading up to the chapel center that they've got several different precious moments, planters, and then of course the precious moments fountain in the middle. I personally never really got into collecting precious moments. The few that I had owned were only ones I had because somebody else gave them to me. I remember they were big. They probably came out in the mid to late 80s. They were a huge thing, I think, in the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. I don't know if anybody still gets into collecting them, but since we were here, I just had to come and at least show you that this is really a thing here in Carthage.